So imagine a scenario where the CFO is talking to the CEO or maybe the board and going through company financials. And she says something to the effect of, well, good news, our gross margin has improved to 70%. And somebody on the board pushes back a little bit and said, well, it looks like your COGS have come down quite a bit to drive that improvement. What have you actually done to make that happen? And then a second person on the board observes, yeah, but your OPEX that's attributed to customer success has actually gone up. And then the CFO says, well, I wouldn't really put a lot of stock in these numbers. We've never really taken the time to set up a properly detailed chart of accounts, and my accounting team is somewhat inconsistent with respect to making sure that expenses are all attributed to the right account. I mean, just think about that. It would be ludicrous, right, if a finance person actually took that position. In fact, the CFO would probably get fired on the spot if she essentially acknowledged that she had never put in the right people, processes, and systems to be able to accurately report the company financials. But that scenario is exactly what exists in most growth and middle market companies when it comes time to focus on go-to-market reporting and analytics. Revenue leaders talk all the time about things like pipeline and pipeline coverage or sales cycle, but nobody, including themselves, believes in the data behind these pipelines because they're largely filled with bogus opportunities. And at our company, we're constantly talking with dozens of go-to-market operations people at the PE firms, and they always remark how unreliable the go-to-market data and reporting is. This is a big problem, right? Because go-to-market results are really just a precursor to financial results. And if you can't properly analyze and model your go-to-market engine, your world will be one of constant surprises, mostly negative, and it's nearly impossible to reliably take proactive actions that are going to improve future outcomes. And that's also why it's so important for strategic finance leaders to take the bull by the horn and insist that this stuff gets fixed. So the goal of this session is really to provide you with a methodology to advance your go-to-market reporting and analytics so that it becomes a legitimate management tool in the same way that financial reporting has been. I'll start today's session just with a kind of a brief reminder of why go-to-market reporting, performance reporting matters. Then we'll talk about the fundamental elements of great reporting, why go-to-market reporting is so often broken in growth and mid-market B2B companies. But the bulk of this session will introduce a framework for how to fix your go-to-market reporting and walk through an example of putting the framework into action. And finally, we'll end with 2 case studies that demonstrate sort of the powerful impact of getting this stuff right. So reporting and analytics exist to answer questions. In the financial realm, it might be questions like, how profitable are we as a company? And is there significant variability in profitability across our geographies or our industry segments, say? Or is our balance sheet strong enough to ride out maybe a period of instability due to high inflation? Or in the SaaS world, we might want to be answering questions such as, what is our LTV to CAC, which is a measure of customer unit economics, or maybe what is our net dollar retention? These financial and SaaS metrics answer the what. In other words, what is the overall health and performance of the business? And historically, it's been primarily boards and investors that have demanded this type of reporting, the metrics and the financial reporting, because it helps them decide, whether to continue to invest and back the business, by how much, or whether to retain existing leadership, et cetera. Go-to-market performance reporting, on the other hand, answers the why, behind the what. And it's understanding the why or the root cause that allows leadership to take informed action to improve outcomes. And done well, go-to-market performance reporting also helps answer the what if. Because if you have really good operational, go-to-market operational data. That data informs high precision models that then allow leadership teams to do scenario modeling to understand, which levers to push and the likely outcomes of different actions they can take. And this is predictability at its finest. And if you think about it, and this is why we stress so much this alignment between finance and go-to-market. This is effectively FP&A, but taking on a little bit broader role to include the go-to-market analytics because they're the ones with the skill set to do that, right? So you can think of financial and SaaS metrics as there to report on performance, while go-to-market performance reporting is really there to improve performance. And companies that are really good at this stuff do, in fact, achieve markedly better performance, whether that's improving ROI on marketing spend, increasing sales productivity, or even just identifying non-productive, wasteful spend, right? And there tends to be a lot of it in these companies. And it's easy to imagine how these kind of performance improvements translates directly to increased valuations. So we spend a lot of time in and around growth and mid-market B2B companies. And in our experience, they are really good at financial reporting. And for subscription businesses, they're reasonably good at the SaaS metrics, though the sausage making behind the scenes can get a little bit ugly. But rarely do we see companies that really have their act together when it comes to go-to-market performance reporting. And we'll take a look at why that is in a minute. As we just said, the entire point of reporting and analytics is to answer questions. And there are really three key fundamental elements to getting this stuff right. First, you need to make sure you're measuring the right stuff to produce the data that you need. Think of this as instrumenting your business or having a data model for your business. For financial reporting, this data model or instrumentation is the chart of accounts. Second, you need mechanisms to ensure that there's good data hygiene in place. Otherwise, the value of any reporting and analytics is completely undermined. In finance, this is typically through some combination of automated expense or revenue capture, along with very explicit standard operating procedures to be followed by accounting staff. And finally, you have to design the presentation of the data in a way that answers the questions you need to be able to answer. Well, in the financial world, this has largely been done for us. This is where income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow statement all come into play. So knowing these three fundamental requirements of great reporting, let's go back and look at why the go-to-market reporting is broken in so many companies. We'll first refer to this as the common state of go-to-market reporting. So first, they are not typically measuring the right stuff. Most of these businesses have not really instrumented their environment to produce the necessary data to answer these questions they need to be able to answer. The tech is often poorly configured because it was set up by people who are not experts in tech, and processes often don't even exist, which would otherwise cause the necessary information to be captured. Secondly, the data is often siloed, separated between sales data, marketing data, CS data, making it very difficult to get sort of a holistic picture of what's going on. And this is often the result of kind of no senior executive owning responsibility for data across the entire customer journey, which is one of the reasons we're actually starting to see more and more boards put that responsibility on the CFO or potentially a COO if there is one. On top of that, most of these businesses are plagued with data hygiene issues, which, as I stated before, completely undermines the value of any analytics. Thirdly, while these companies have hundreds of reports and dashboards, they've rarely been designed in a way that makes it easy to draw insights or conclusions from. And so companies we talk to talk all the time about having a whole bunch of data. We got reports and dashboards out the wazoo, but none of it being actionable. And as a result, senior leaders are often left to act on gut and intuition. And even the most experienced of us won't always get it right, and our actions often make the situation worse because of unintended consequences, since we don't have very good models to understand, how pushing here impacts something else down here. So let's contrast that with what we think of as sort of designing reporting for actionability. We have a methodology for designing for actionability. We call it data drives action. That's what we're going to talk about today. It's proven to be very effective at transforming data into a useful tool for senior leadership. And we'll basically walk you through that so that you can apply it in your own business if you'd like. So we start by considering the outcome, which is the set of all the possible actions you might want to take or you might consider taking to improve performance. For example, you might take actions, let me just say, there's dozens or hundreds of actions you could take, right? And so we sort of synthesized them here into a handful of categories or buckets. And, you might take actions to change people, such as coaching, training, terminating. Maybe you'll take actions to streamline processes with the goal of shortening sales cycles or perhaps improving conversion rates. It might also take some actions that are channel related, maybe by moving investment, away from outbound prospecting and in favor of paid LinkedIn advertising and so on, right? So there's a whole bunch of actions you can take. By knowing the possible actions, you could take, we then ask ourselves, what insights do I need to have that would compel me to take one set of actions versus another? Said another way, what questions do I need to be able to answer to inform actions? And identifying these key business questions, it really is at the heart of this methodology. It's absolutely critical part of it. In product development vernacular, you could think of the business questions as the requirements that need to be met with the design of our data and analytics. So the next step after identifying the insights or these key business questions is to translate that into what data is needed and how does that data need to be presented in order to readily answer these key business questions. And when we walk through an example in a little bit, I'll show you some samples of what we mean when we say presenting, design the presentation of the data to answer key questions. And then the final step in the methodology, we know what data we need to have, we know how we want it presented, is to basically identify how we're going to source that data. And that is through a combination of instrumenting the tech stack and implementing processes which capture the necessary data. This methodology for achieving actionable data is really super effective because by starting with the end outcome, which is sort of performance improving actions, and reverse engineering back to the tech and the processes, we ensure that there's a complete linkage that creates great go-to-market performance reporting. And, so many companies, fail to do a good job thinking about the real requirements, and they just immediately go into solutioning mode, which is why you see so many CRMs that are just littered with tech debt, right? People just do stuff in them without really thinking about what they're trying to achieve. So this methodology not only gets you a very clear solution to the known requirements, but it also avoids a lot of tech debt, unnecessary tech debt that would otherwise happen. So we're going to go through an example. Let's parse this a bit deeper with a specific example of how it works. Remember, we start by identifying the possible actions that can be taken to improve performance. In this example, we're going to consider actions to change channels. And when we say channels, we're referring to the channels or strategies a company uses to source prospective customers. Might include things like paid search advertising, paid LinkedIn advertising, outbound prospecting, events, trade shows, as well as channel partners, right? And when we talk about actions to change channels, we would most likely be talking about increasing or decreasing investment levels in certain channels so that we're more heavily investing in our most productive channels and moving investment away from the least productive channels. So what insights would we need that would compel us to move money into one channel and take it away from another? Well, we would need to know relative ROI on a channel basis, assuming that efficiency was an important priority for us, which it seems to be for most companies these days. If growth, however, was a priority, we would really need to know which channels were the most scalable and had the greatest upside. If we were looking for some kind of balance between efficiency and growth, then we would probably want to know which channels are both scalable and decently efficient, right? Or perhaps we just care about maximizing short-term results, in which case we would want to know which channel mix would in fact accomplish that. And as I mentioned before, this is a critical part of the methodology, because knowing these questions you need to be able to answer sets the stage for the instrumentation and the analytics. So again, by being crystal clear on these questions, it makes it fairly straightforward to define what data is needed, how should it be presented in order to answer those questions. The presentation or design of how the data is reported is critical. This is what makes it easy to draw insights from data, right? Sort of what makes it actionable. Here's an example. We call it a data drives action dashboard. It's basically designed to help answer the very specific question of what channels have the best ROI. And though it might be difficult to really deduce here, the data is organized to look at relative value of an opportunity by channel, as well as relative value of a lead by channel, combined with the other charts that would show up beneath these ones on the full dashboard. It makes it really easy for the revenue leader or an analyst to draw conclusions about relative channel ROI, and then take actions to double down on the good ones and terminate investment in the non-productive channels. So this is what we mean by sort of designing the presentation of the data for actionability. So let's go back to the required data to answer the questions. We need full funnel analytics to answer ROI and scalability questions. This includes volume metrics, conversion rate metrics, as well as cycle time metrics. And here is an example of full funnel analytics by channel. Think of it as a dashboard where we're looking at lead, top of funnel through middle of funnel through bottom of funnel, conversion and volume counts attributed by different channels. So that's what we mean when we talk about needing full funnel analytics. And again, if you go back to this point we talked about earlier, where so much of the data is siloed, the vast majority of companies we run into just really struggle to pull this information, which is so powerful to have to pull it together. So going back again to the required data, we need cost data that we need to be able to attribute costs to different parts of the funnel for each channel, and we need NRR data attributed by channel. So now we've identified the data we need, as well as how it should be presented to improve actionability. And by the way, up to this point, this work can be done by the leadership team or go-to-market analysts. We haven't yet gotten to the point that we need any tech stack gurus, Salesforce gurus, or anything like that. That's where we go with the next step. The last step then is determining how are we going to source that data and ensure sufficient hygiene so the data is worth analyzing. And this is where a go-to-market analyst or data strategist teamed with go-to-market technology architects are really required to kind of put the meat on the bones. It's during this stage of the methodology that you will need to get very detailed about what objects, fields, layouts, automations in the CRM need to be touched and how. You'll also need to be clear on specific integrations between CRM and other tech that are necessary to sync data or to produce the required data, including how to ingest the necessary cost data from the financial systems. And it's during this stage where you may need to implement some new processes to ensure proper data capture. For example, we recently helped a customer of ours implement a deal certification process where effectively finance had the responsibility for moving opportunities to closed won. And this process change immediately fixed this chronic problem they had of inconsistent data between the CRM and the ERP. And again, this methodology has proven very effective across a whole lot of organizations. And it's effective because it's undeniable how it connects data to actions. So this stuff works. I'll give you two case examples, case studies. When you get your go-to-market data and reporting to a state of true actionability, performance will improve. Take the case of a $40 million SaaS provider. These guys provide customer success platforms. They were experiencing a significant decrease in win rate. They thought it was due to an overall softening of the macro conditions in the market, combined with the fact that their newer sales cohorts really were struggling to ramp. And they considered, what they were going to do as their course of action, corrective actions. They were going to terminate the new sales cohorts and basically just batten down the hatches on expenses across the board. After working with them to get their go-to-market data and analytics in a better state, it became apparent that the primary cause of the declining win rate was that marketing had recently started over-indexing on SMB leads, basically investing in campaigns and channels that disproportionately brought in SMB leads. And SMB leads were really outside of this company's ICP. And as a result, they converted much more poorly than non-SMB. And the newer sales cohorts, who people just thought they were terrible, they were disproportionately handed the SMB leads to work. And as a result, of understanding this, that this was really a target selection issue, the company redirected its top of funnel investments back to ICP targets, and their win rate doubled in literally 2 quarters. So just think about that. If you were able to double your win rate, what does that do to growth and valuation, right? This is not peanuts that we're talking about. It's major league impact to the financial welfare of your company. Here's another example of how solid go-to-market operational analytics can have a major impact. The company is a $15 million SaaS provider. They provide marketing platform for local businesses like roofing companies or pool service companies, et cetera. And they had started experimenting with Facebook advertising and saw a terrific correlation between spend and leads, right? The more they spent, the more leads they got. And they thought they had finally found this holy grail, a scalable sourcing strategy, and they began to double down on the Facebook ad spend. And they pulled their SDRs off of prospecting so that they could service all of these leads coming in from Facebook ads. But while their leads were going up, their bookings actually were going down. And here again, by helping them get their data into a better state of actionability, what the data actually showed was that SDR prospecting was a much more productive channel for them than Facebook advertising was, because the Facebook leads converted so poorly. There's just a lot of non-ICP leads and stuff, right? It's similar to the previous story. In fact, the data showed that it cost them $22,000 to acquire a customer via Facebook ads versus $5,000 through outbound prospecting, right? A difference of more than 4x. And part of the reason it was so expensive with Facebook is that they were applying expensive SDR and AE resources on working these poor converting leads. So they ended up redirecting their efforts towards prospecting and away from Facebook. And literally within 4 months, their bookings were up 6x. So the moral of the story here is that decisions you make and actions you take do in fact matter, for better or for worse. And the more knowledge and understanding you can have, the more likely you are to make good decisions and take productive actions. You need to get your go-to-market performance reporting right. Valuation, for sure, and perhaps company viability depend on it. So hopefully today I gave you a glimpse into an effective methodology to get your go-to-market reporting in order. And by the way, on the last slide, we'll give you a link. So we actually have a template that we'll share with you to help guide you through this if you want to do this stuff yourself. But it does require that you have the right skill sets necessary to make it happen. This type of work touches sales, marketing, customer success, and finance leadership. So it's imperative that there's someone with program management and change management skills and leadership temperament to kind of coordinate this stuff across the business functions. You will need a data strategist, who is the person that can translate from sort of these required business insights into data presentation and data points necessary to make it happen. You'll need a tech stack architect to do the design and the architecture of the tech stack changes necessary to implement the required instrumentation. And then a decently skilled admin to actually do the implementation work. And finally, you'll want an experienced data analyst to interpret the data and turn it into curated insights and articulate those findings to the leadership team. Obviously, this adds up to a fair amount of money, right? You don't need all of these people, full time necessarily, but this adds up to a lot of money. And most growth and mid-market businesses haven't invested in this type of bench, which is partly why, in fact, largely why they're struggling with a lot of this go-to-market reporting. But of course, an alternative to DIY soft sales pitch here is to let people like Scale Matters do this for you. And we're not for everybody, but we'd be happy to have a brief discovery call with anyone interested to see if it's a good fit or if we could be helpful. Cool. Last slide. Thanks for your time. Hopefully you found this somewhat helpful as a way to think about how to get more actionable go-to-market data into your own organization to drive better performance. As I said, we're happy to give you the template for our Data Drives Action Framework, which will definitely save you some time and help jumpstart your efforts to advance your go-to-market reporting. So just go to the link on this page and we'll send it your way. Thanks again. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll stay around and answer some questions.
Thanks, Scott. Yeah, we had nothing in the chat, but a couple of questions came in directly over to me that I want to throw over to you to see, what your feedback to the questionnaire is. The first one is about the timing, I guess, of doing this work, because somebody asked, you mentioned a $15 million company and a $40 million company. What is the right time to do this? And I think they're referring to like time in terms of history of the business or size.
The cleanest answer is it depends on how much you got going on data-wise, right? So earlier stage companies, 5 million, 3 million, if they are high velocity motions, right? Doing 10, 20 new customers a month, maybe 3K a pop, they're going to be producing a lot of data, or they have if they've instrumented, they would be producing a lot of data. So it could make sense for high velocity companies to do this fairly quickly. Not earlier than 3 to 5 million, but that's kind of the most basic entry point. Maybe you have 3 or 4 salespeople, but they're each bringing in 3 to 5 deals a month. Probably makes sense to start instrumenting because there's going to be enough levers that you can actually start improving productivity. If you're an enterprise company and you're doing, 1, 2, maybe 3 big deals a year per rep, I'd say you probably need to be close to 10 reps by the time, in order to be at the point that there's too much data. There would be too much data to really make sense of it all, manually, and that instrumenting the environment and building out the right reporting and stuff would really become a very valuable tool. So that could be, 15, 20 million maybe for an enterprise focused company. really depends. But I'd say a good rule of thumb there is maybe 10 combined sales and SDR people.
Okay, and then let's just hit this other question real quickly before we sign off. Thanks for everyone who's hanging over a few minutes past the half-hour mark here. The question is about the role of the CFO and the FP&A analyst in this process that you just walked through. The question is, you shared 5 roles on that last slide, and none of them were finance roles. So how should the CFO and the FP&A analyst be involved in the framework?
I would say those two, the data strategist and the data analyst, very much could be FP&A roles, and we absolutely have seen that happen. And we're actually suggesting that more and more FP&A functions take that on, because the revenue functions have just been too slow to do this. Well, one of the reasons is because it goes across the various functions, so nobody really claims any budget for it, right? So it makes sense for the data strategist, data analyst to be within FP&A, because that's the role they do for the company. Why should the go-to-market part of the company analytics be excluded from that?
Gotcha, makes sense. Okay, well, let's wrap it up here. And just a reminder again, the next webinar we're having in this series is next Wednesday, November 20th. It'll be at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. So be sure to sign up for how to properly set up your chart of accounts to measure ROI on go-to-market spend. That's the next one. And again, you'll be getting the free template for achieving great go-to-market performance reporting. The Data Drives Action Framework template will be available to you. You can go to that link right now, or we'll send it out tomorrow in an email to your email address. Thanks for everyone for coming and for your comments in the chat and for your questions. Hope you can join us on the next one. Thanks, Scott, and we'll see you all next time.
Thanks, everyone.